Alrighty, g'day everyone. You are tuning in to the very first Old World Behemoths episode. The reason that we're, of course, called the Old World Behemoths is a long-winded, beautiful story. We have one Alasdair McDonald, a tournament winner. We have one Alex, who is best in faction in Australia for the Wolves of the Sea. And then we've, of course, got Chris, who is best in faction in Australia for Ogre Kingdoms. My claim to fame as a behemoth is just simply because I'm 196 centimeters, and that's basically it. I'm here to learn as much as you guys are. So thanks, guys, for joining us. We've got a pretty cool little episode planned for you today. Basically, we're getting ready for a tournament. The first tournament that I think three of us are going to. We've previously just spotted around Sydney having a good time. But without further ado, Alex and Alasdair, how about you take us off and tell us what we're about to experience this weekend?
Let's
Let's preface something on our behemoth status. I've said this before. I think it took me 16 games to get to the top ranked Wolves of the Sea. 14 were losses in a tournament. So one was a draw and one was a win. So that's how you get to the top of a sub faction, guys. Is grind it out, and just tell everybody else, don't play them. Don't play them. They're terrible.
Just until you get enough points to beat. Until you get enough points to beat that one dude who played a 3-round tournament once and came, I don't know,
Won
fourth.
2 games.
Yeah. I would like to point out that tournament winner, sure, but only because I led the arms race, and now we find ourselves in this particular tournament with the fruits of my creation. But let's dive in, because what we're looking at, what we're preparing for, is the Old Hammer. So Western Sydney Wargamers' 4th tournament now. Collectively, between the 4 of us, we've been to every Old Hammer so far, which is great to see. They're a fabulous little group, if you're not aware of them, running large tournaments out of Blacktown RSL, which is amazing. One every quarter or so. They're expanding the numbers. They're up to 30 people at this point with a wait list as well. So really fabulous little community. Started off very friendly and soft and quaint, but isn't so much anymore. We're up to 2,000.
Won an event, and then away we went.
Correct. We're at 2,000 points now. Fortunately, we've thrown a Skulls comp, so it's not too bad. So
that was because of you. We have to keep saying that. That was because of you.
Correct, because the dragon I took was 520 points at 1750. So can't spend more than 25% of your points on any single character, which is fabulous. Limited to 1 level 4 per 2,000 points and 1 level 3 per 1,000 points. So no more than 2 level 3s you'll see at this point. No limits on the lower ones. That's effectively competitive as it is, including rule of 3. So that's the other important one to point out. So core, I think they're allowing up to 6, but everything else is rule of 3, which for me means that I can't take 6 cannons, unfortunately.
And I think, just the 2,000 points being limited at 500 points on a character is just sort of music to a lot of people's ears. You know, you got those Chaos Dragons that are like nearly 700 points, or as soon as you start seeing that 500 point limit, you get a lot of Ogre Blade reduction. There's not a lot of multi-wound things coming around, and you get a lot of protective packages. But proceed.
If I'm honest, I personally would prefer a return to the classic old days of 8th Ed, where it's no more than 25% of on characters, period,
Amen.
Rather than the environment that we're in, where you can spend half your army points on characters. But that's just me. Shall we jump into... We're going to have a look at the missions. The big theme I feel that it's important to raise for all of the mission packs that they've put together is that they're trying to break up some of the competitive play standard by offering these sort of diverse mission packs with some conditions on what's scoring and what's not. The big one is that standard bearers are scoring units. So what we've seen when we've had a look through all of the lists, and Alex and I have been part of list analyses, among other things, but is standard bearers are prevalent. They're around. That's going to mean extra victory points for everyone if you're defeating standard bearer units in combat. So it changes the way that not only people are building lists, but also the outcomes of a lot of games. I'll run through this one and then I'll hand off to someone else because I feel like I'm just talking a lot. But
I was going to say quickly, Tom, before you joined the scene, they were attempting some missions that were based on ranks.
Yes.
And Chris, tell us how that went with Ogres.
As an Ogre player, I think I had one unit with one rank until you shot off 2 Ogres, and then I'd lose that rank, basically. So
Should have gone Noblars.
I should have 100 Noblars.
They have the option. No, I think also the presence of a standard bearer, including a BSB or whatever have you, is just quite compelling and quite dynamic on the table. Like, it's just a beautiful thing to see in that sort of square-based game of Warhammer. So I really like that inclusion. It does open up a lot of... Still not... Ogres aren't quite there yet, are they, Chris? But
No,
it opens up
not
some
quite.
cheap little ways for standard bearers to hit the table and be scoring and level that playing field, which is, I think, what the WG guys are trying to do. So
Yeah, and I think also, as you'll see when we get through the rest of these missions, the overall idea behind this is they want to try and push those units that you're not really seeing on the table. We're not seeing big infantry blocks. We're not seeing those classic Warhammer lists. And instead of just turning around and going, right, we're going to, when it comp army rules, or we're going to change how the core rules work, I think it's very elegant to actually turn to the mission pack, which I'll be the first to admit I don't really like the missions in the core rulebook. And I think they can definitely be done in a much better way. This is, to me, the most elegant way of trying to push a better meta through a tournament by just going, hey, look, every mission requires you to really think about how you've built your list to not just stomp your opponent. You actually have to have, these other options.
Definitely.
Yeah.
There is
Chris,
Sorry.
One quick point, Alasdair, was that if anyone's tracking the square-based online poll, effectively, that was going on a few weeks ago, where they asked people that played in the square-based online tournament, which was 120 people, I feel like, maybe 130 people. They basically said, would you be interested in continuing to develop these types of missions that are playable? And I want to say it was 60-70% of people said absolutely yes. We don't want to play the rulebook missions because all it does is reward go fast, kill fast armies, and doesn't play into most of the legacy factions, unless you're like a vampire counts or something like that.
Yeah, there's a definite limitation. So I agree with Chris. The attempts here in order to make the missions more impactful on list building is definitely welcome. There is a limitation, though. I mean, what we saw going through a lot of the lists are plenty of lists that are either totally ignoring the fact that there is a need for some sort of scoring and just hoping that a total knockout is going to be possible. But also, then you've got other lists that all they realistically do, including mine, to be perfectly frank, you just add banners to units that can take them, but you wouldn't have necessarily spent that 5 or 10 points to stick a banner on that unit, and thus your unit, which was serving a purpose but wasn't very expensive, is now a scoring unit on top of everything else. So I feel like there's limitations for it. But that said, I mean, it's still extraordinarily welcome. And as we'll talk to when we go through the missions, each of the missions sort of lends itself toward a particular style of play that will either reward or punish that sort of approach, where you're just sticking a banner on something as opposed to really thinking about what you can do. So let's talk about this first mission. It's command and control. The idea is to hold the town feature in the center of the board. Low linear obstacles introduced for the first time in the Western Sydney Wargamers tables, which is really exciting to see, along with their associated rules and all of the clarifications coming out of the most recent FAQ disallowing stomps and impact hits if you're charging something that is defending a low linear obstacle. So lots of ability for a big blocky unit of something to jump in the middle there and be quite protected from the behemoths, the flying monsters, the things that really do rely on those auto hit mechanics to do a significant amount of their damage. Other than that, it's relatively simple. You've got hills in the deployment zone. You've got forests in the deployment zone. One thing about this player's pack is that all forests for every mission are dangerous terrain. So that's another thing that we've seen, which puts a big bonus towards anything that has moved through cover, Ithilmar barding, any of those that can reroll dangerous terrain tests for everybody else, particularly if you're running one wound elite units, suddenly becomes a lot less attractive to be jumping into dangerous terrain. But it'll be interesting to see. Two smaller impassables. Usually the way that these tables have gone is two big impassables, two hills, two forests, and that's been pretty consistent across the different mission variations and setups. This is totally different to what we've seen before, so it'll be really interesting to see what that little town setup looks like on Saturday, and how much of a sort of blocking presence it's going to have, particularly for me, with 3 cannons that are going to sit on a hill.
I think from what I can gather as well, they definitely early on they were using the square-based terrain pack, and it looks like what they've done is they've just slowly modified it to kind of as they've needed to. But like the core of the maps have always kind of been square-based, pre-set up terrain kind of stuff.
They have teased. Yeah, they have teased the desire to introduce a lot more terrain features that are unique to their boards, so rivers, water features, that sort of thing, over time. And so one of the really exciting things about this group and these tournaments on a regular basis is just what sort of change we can expect next. They've done so much work to get these tables looking really beautiful to play on. A lot of work on the terrain, a lot of 15 tables. That's an enormous effort in terms
more
of...
now.
Well, yeah. But just in terms of the sheer hours that you need to spend, the money that you need to spend on top of that, but the hours... Yeah,
they've done a fantastic job. Just walking into the game setting or the venue and looking around at all the, nearly fully painted armies. Sorry, my bad. And the fantastic terrain. There's nothing quite like it from a wargaming sort of setting. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing to behold.
It was a great kept secret, Tom, in Little Western Sydney, where we had the guys, but I think we called it probably 6 months ago. You had, as Alistair said, high quality terrain, high quality judging too.
Yeah.
It's very much a scene of... sometimes I like to joke that we're like the geriatric league of the gamers now, because we don't want to be going to tournaments and arguing about rules at tables and
no, thank you.
Playing janky stuff that if you interpret it this way, it comes out this way, etc. That was Warhammer 10 years ago, not of today. So the guys really enforce a viewpoint that the game should play as it was intended, perhaps, not as how it was always written. And I, for one, have experienced that firsthand with things like Skin Wolves, where we hear about stories in the UK and America where they're passing on their buffs to the characters and turning on all these mega killer units. But very simple discussion down here. If you can prove to me how mutating Skinwolf somehow gives it to the Chaos Lord in simple fashion, then I'll do it. And it doesn't happen that way. And so even before we had FAQs about the Sisters of Eternity, I think that's or Sisters of the Thorn, sorry. Get passing across a ward save from GW, they were already saying that's not allowed.
Yeah.
So credit goes to the guys.
Definitely, and they've done a lot of work preparing, an event-specific FAQ for themselves that helps to clarify a lot of this. And it also helps that we have some of the most competitive voices from the Australian tournament scenes, or at least the Sydney tournament scenes.
3 of which are right here. You can take a guess who they
are. But participating in that discussion, because, some of them were really early comers to the scene. So Paddy Gallagher, for example, was...
number 1 in Australia.
Yep, but was one of the first people at the first Western Sydney Wargamers tournament back when it was only 24 people, I think, maybe less.
16. It was 16 the first one. The first event was 16.
But, her voice lending to a lot of these conversations has meant a lot of the really tricky, finicky stuff that we've seen be a little bit less restricted at a place like CanCon. In this scene, common sense is prevailing a lot of the time. And it's we've all felt its impact. I'd love to see my inspiring presence applying to my Priests of Uruk, but we don't always get what we want, but we get what's fair.
Yes, and the WhatsApp group is a great place where rules
sure.
debates happen with 100+. And shout out to Paddy and Alex from the 2+ podcast, who are also important to building the awareness of that scene, but also about creating a mindset where if you want to play competitively, you can do so, but socially at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? So they run their own Discord as well. Encourage everybody to check them out and get into there as well, because it is very much tailored around if you're a gamer that wants to go to events, but have a bit of a group that's regular at those events, then definitely check out the 2+ scene.
I think also just to extend that point, particularly about the WhatsApp group, it's so nice that because for the listeners, everyone that attends the event is put into this WhatsApp group, just so we can coordinate stuff. But then kind of pre-event and also, in all that space in between the events, we have these pretty healthy rules discussions, and it kind of basically comes across as someone, and I won't name names, will come across a particular interaction and they go, oh, I really want to do this in my list, and it's kind of going to make or break this particular list. And it's so nice that they're happy to share that in the group to get an actual ruling on it ahead of time, but also to flag it with everyone else to say, hey, just so you know, if this gets approved, I absolutely can run this particular kind of list, so you just have to be aware of it. And that kind of inclusive discussion is just so nice compared to, because I play a lot of other games, and sometimes you rock up to an event and some guy's taken a particular list and he's gone, oh, I was messaging the TO and he approved this. And so that conversation only happened between the TO and that player. He rocks up to the table, gives you this ruling, and suddenly it's like, oh, my whole interpretation of the game has changed because of that ruling, and I've had no idea ahead of time.
There's a very clear disdain for gotchas in this particular group. So it's extraordinarily healthy to be able to have this sort of discussion to make sure that these things get clarified ahead of time, and everyone encourages everyone else to talk about it or call it out as well. That's the other thing. It's not like you're a bad guy for raising this. It's more you need to talk about this in a group setting so that the people running the event, the ultimate rules arbiters, can understand the different viewpoints, can understand what the intent is behind a lot of these curly interpretations or otherwise, and then make a ruling that everyone can adhere to. It's so
sometimes good. The rules go 50-50. It's literally 50-50. And there's no clear interpretation.
It's not the most succinctly written rule set. I think we all
everybody's clear on that.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into mission number 2. So pretty stock standard thing there, with some low linear obstacles added in for a little bit of winter interest, so they say. But then we go into a sort of vertical side, and I do note, which is quite cool, the hills have been moved into no man's land. So you're not just going to be able to smack some large ranged unit on one of these hills and reap all the benefits. You actually have to start thinking about like 3 cannons or 2 iron blasters, potentially. You're going to have to make sure that you touch those hills and get in there to reap those rewards. And that sort of starts opening up some new spell lines like Arcane Urgency or, Travel Mystical Pathways. Not that they're exactly unplayed at the moment, but, it's cool to see people making those decisions that they might not otherwise make. But apart from that, it's a table quarter. So basically just divide the table into 4. And again, having a standard bearer in one of those table quarters controls it. And then that will give you an extra BP. So some pretty big, hefty rewards. Do you guys have any additions to make?
Yeah, I suppose the thing I'll jump on is every one of those battle points is worthwhile. and through all of our experience, I think we've each had a game previously in this series of tournaments where you've had a game, and at the end, that extra 1 or 2 BPs has led to a draw, or it's led to like a just win, or it's changed, quite a clear win into something that's a lot more narrow. So between that and the fact that this is 3 rounds with 30 people, every battle point counts, which is something really interesting again about these packs and about some of the people who are less concerned about scoring the extra BPs or hoping to score all the BPs when all of their opponents are just dead, because those battle points can make an enormous difference to your final ranking, even if you go undefeated throughout the day.
And the other thing is the games, I feel, are getting closer. So you touched on it, that you could turn it into a draw. I feel like most games are draws.
Yeah.
Most of the time, and especially I'm now playing. Well, unless you're like you and have a dragon, there's 20-0 people. But for me, right? Like I'm now playing points denial dwarfs, if that makes sense, right? And maybe we'll touch on this a bit later. But it's effectively 2 big blocks that are hard to shift, a toughness 10 anvil. So I'm going to start from the position that I'm getting a draw, plus these battle points.
You're so innovative.
Right? So innovative.
Who hurt you, Alex?
I don't know. The 12 straight losses with the Wolves.
Now it's time to make a difference, eh?
I think one thing I'd like to shout out about this meeting engagement. As an ogre player, I am licking my lips at 12 inches away from each other. But I think that they've handled it pretty elegantly, because if you can see, those hills and the houses will kind of break up your line a bit. So you can't just deploy right on that 12-inch line and just turn one, all right, I'm just going to charge everything in, because you can't really get everything in. So that's quite a nice way of dealing with that particular deployment.
Yeah, and I mean, both those houses and those hills, unless you're touching the hills, of course, are going to block line of sight. So there's a lot of avenues that you can take to break up that board. Well, let's bang into the final mission. Alex, did you want to, or Chris, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So, this one's high ground. Pretty standard deployment. The hills are in your deployment zone this time. Now the woods have been moved into no man's land. So you're trying to control the hills with a standard bearer. So you get 1 bonus point for controlling your hill, and it's 2 bonus points if you control the hill on the opposite side of the board. So it's kind of really trying to push you to obviously hold your hill and really reward you if you can get all the way over and push your opponent off their hill.
And again, that sort of really will help factions like your ogres, I guess, because you've got a big block that can move with arcane urgency and battle magic, etc., and really try and force people. Basically just bring the fight to them. So it does open up, and it does provide those hills again, which make cannon exchanges quite difficult, noting the new FAQ that everyone's working off. But it's still a little bit of the same, but with some winter interests based on standard bearers and some slight terrain shifts.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure
cool.
he'll touch on it later, but I'm curious, Alex, what's your plan? If you're playing a pretty defensive dwarf list, what is the unit that you think is going to actually get over to the other side of the board?
So this is a point I was going to actually talk about, because I feel the choices have been carefully designed to reward different lists. So mission 1 with the walls, the idea of that is say, okay, you don't get stomped, so your dragons and your giant chaos spawns just don't have easy games every time. The second match is to reward more combat, aggressive armies, your closer deployment, you can get in there. This one is to say, okay guys, we're going to open up the field a bit. We will give the dragons some play because they can pretty much charge anything, and the cannons can have pretty much full field. For me to walk across that with movement 3, perhaps 4 dwarves, I'm relying on the anvil, effectively double movement, drilled, marching column, dwarves going 27 inches first turn. But it's variants that can go off, right? But how do you ask that, Tom? Well, they Vanguard 3 inches. I can explain it. They go to
We can
4
get-
in marching
we'll-
column, which goes
We'll
to
get that
12.
into
Double
we'll get
move,
into
24,
that into
27.
your. He's answered it. The equation has been provided. Okay, fantastic.
One last thing I'll shout out about this mission is it's interesting that yes, you can deploy your cannons on the hill, but your opponent is coming straight for that hill. So maybe you don't actually place your cannons on the hill. You know, maybe it's better to have them off, and you get that extra turn or two of shooting at the unit that's trying to get up on your hill.
Yeah, definitely. Well, they're the missions, and so that's sort of obviously in for some players shaped how they're going to build their rosters, and that's definitely the thing that we're going to get into here. Unfortunately, Chris, you can't make it to this event, but if you had of, you would have been taking the beautiful, the lovely, your best faction. Your best in Australia faction, in fact, Ogres. So walk us through really what you would be trying to do with this roster, and you know, if you feel so obliged, whack us through how you'd approach or how you did approach building this for the different missions.
Sure. So I guess I'll caveat it at the start that in every system that I've ever played, I do not read the players pack that heavily ahead of time. I give it a quick skim. As you can see, I think I've only got 2 standard bearer units in here. Not that I have that many units in total, so it doesn't matter that much. But I usually just try and build the best list that I can think of at the time, and one that I just want to run. It's a pretty standard ogre list, I would say. I've been recently swayed by Tom to go with more of a gut style build. So that's that big unit of Iron Guts. In many ways, the Iron Guts are the only good core unit that we have. Because you have to take core and you have to take 500 points of core, you may as well pump up a decent unit of Iron Guts. So before this, I was running, I think, 1 unit of 5 and 1 unit of 4, and then usually putting a character in it. And they were going okay, but they were dying most games, and that gives up quite a lot of points. As soon as I put 9 down, and then, as you can see, the 2 characters on foot, which is the Wizard, the Slaughtermaster, and the Bruiser, are going in that unit. That's 11 ogre bodies with pretty good saves, pretty good protection spells around them. The Cannibal Totem is a 5-up regen, always. It's a pretty scary unit that I'm banking on heavily that it's not going to die. And if it's not going to die, that's... I can't remember exactly how many points. It's probably close to 800 points that my opponent's not getting. In terms of the other things in the list, I've got 3 Ogre Bulls, which I affectionately call 3 idiots. You have to take them. They're not great. I didn't put a banner on them. If I would read the mission pack more carefully, I probably would have. Because then, particularly in that table quarter mission, they might be nice to just hold a particular table quarter while the rest of the list goes off.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got an Iron Blaster. I'm only running 1.
No spoilers.
Yeah, just to try and chip away at big scary things and threaten them. Iron Blast is just a great cannon because it moves and shoots like a cannon, so you can really get some tricky shots off. And I have almost called out people, and I've had to explain to them that, like, I've deployed the Iron Blaster, let's say on a hill, and they're just treating it like a cannon. And so they've done all this deployment angling to be like, okay, your cannon can't shoot me. And it's like, just so you know, turn 1, I'm moving 6 inches and shooting the cannon. So all of that tricky deployment stuff, if you're done, doesn't matter. And
the free lumber is just beautiful as well.
Yeah. Mournfang, probably one of the best units in the Ogre roster. So I run the Great Weapons with the Bull Standard, which gives you the reroll impact hits. If I can get the charge off, it's an amazing unit. If I get charged, it's still a decent unit, but I lose that banner, like all of the benefits of that banner, and you lose a lot of the damage output of the Mournfang, to be honest. So you got to play it carefully. And then the final thing in my list is the big scary Tyrant, who is running, just going to quickly check, 20 points below the cap of the single character.
So he's 480, yeah.
Yeah, I love the big monsters in Ogres. I do lean more towards the Stonehorn. Again, it's very similar to the Mournfang. If you get the charge off with the Stonehorn, you're sitting very pretty because it gets a lot of impact hits, but the trade-off is it doesn't get a stomp. So
Yeah.
if you want to play a bit more defensive, or if you think that you can't really control the charging very well, you're probably better off running the Thunder Tusk instead. But yeah, I quite like the Stonehorn.
The damage reduction for multiple wounds is quite nice as well. Especially,
Yes, definitely.
it seems to be that a lot of rosters are taking the Ogre Blade for that D3 on their big combat characters or something similar.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not going to offer you any protection against killing or monstrous killing blow, but it is what it is.
No.
And you've got a juicy Ogre Blade of your own, which is nice because that means that you're swinging at initiative of 5 because the tyrants are quite fast. So,
I'd just like to shout out that the Ogre Blade is thematic because I am an ogre.
So it's a normal size
Yeah,
sword.
it's a normal size sword, yeah.
Yeah.
Wielded by an ogre, you actually don't get any extra
Yeah.
special rules, but yeah.
I think the only other thing that I'll shout out in the list is Demon Slaying Scars on the Slaughtermaster. So I was running this in pretty much every event, and what it does is it gives that character terror. When you put that, that character and the unit that it joins terror. When you put it in a unit of 9 Iron Guts with a Bruiser, and suddenly, because their unit's score, I can't remember exactly
Unit
what
strength
it is.
is 33, yeah, it's massive.
So all of a sudden, terror doesn't really come into things all that often, but when you've got that unit score that high, that whole terror fear stuff really starts to pop off quite a lot, because there's very few units in the game that will get that high on their unit score.
Yeah, and terror, even if your unit strength 1 being charging with terror activates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the fear, and I think LC called this out the other day on the 2 Plus podcast, was most people never really run into it because you tend to outnumber the 3 Ogre Bulls or the 5 Iron Guts. That unit strength, what was it, 33? 33. Yeah, you're taking fear checks.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, unfortunately, you can't attend, Chris, so we don't have your opponent's roster. But we do have Alasdair. We have your roster and your opponent's roster because pairings have been released for round 1. So let's jump into what you're thinking of taking.
Yes, let's. So, historically, I've been a Dark Elf purist, and one of the things that really disappointed me about the old world was the fact that my cherished faction, of which I have 3,500, 4,000 points worth of Dark Elves, I just can't really see a whole lot of future for them, particularly given if a lot of events end up taking the lead from the designers in the UK, a lot of tournaments moving into the future may not even allow legacy factions, which is extraordinarily rubbish. So I made the pivot a little while ago before the Arcane Journal was released, I'd like to point out, to Empire, just to revisit the good old 40k days of playing humans in a fantastic fantasy setting. And I'm very much enjoying it. And at this point, my plan is to work towards 2,000 points of Knights of the White Wolf, so I can run that purely and have that as a beautiful looking, very, very thematic list, because they are gorgeous and there's some outstanding prints out there as well to support it. But this list is a little bit of an amalgamation of what I have prepared for the White Wolves so far, what we've managed to print and what I've managed to paint in time. And then on top of that, the existing Grand Army that I was already playing. So Grandmaster on a Demigryph, he's got the Ogre Blade and the White Cloak to give him 95 points of magic items, but basically he's a 2+ armor save, toughness 4, strength 6, weapon skill 6 combat character. So not the most intimidating out there, but certainly respectable. Gives his unit, if he joins either the Demigryphs or the Empire Knights, gives them immune to psychology. Has a bunch of sort of knight-specific rules, which are also quite nice. I've got a High Priest of Ulrich, who realistically just has defensive options, mounted on a Barded Warhorse, so he gets his counter-charge and all the bits and pieces for heavy cavalry. I've got a Wizard Lord on a Pegasus, with a Lore Familiar running Elementalism and a Wizard's Familiar for +1 to Dispels. This is mostly for magic defense and then a little bit of shenanigans. I think all of us went into list building this time around, thinking that we were going to have to deal with, at 2,000 points, flying behemoths of some sort, particularly dragons. There are plenty of cheap dragon options you can take for less than 500 points that are still really good. And I was torn between taking elementalism or illusion, and it was elementalism that eventually ran out, just because of the sheer amount of control you can have with some of those spells, plus the offensive augments that it can give me for my knights. An Empire Engineer to give me rerolls on the 3 great cannons that I'm bringing, because I was determined that if I can't bring a big monster of my own, then I'm going to bring stuff that can just shoot the hell out of the big monsters that I can see. So 3 great cannons. I'd be running 6 if the comp allowed. But rounding out my core, 2 units of state missile troops with light armor and standards. They generally form the wings behind that are attached to the artillery battery. 9 Empire Knights of the White Wolf. So with the Arcane Journal being released, the Knights of the White Wolf, basically the way that I look at it with Furious Charge is suddenly that list starts hitting like a unit that's twice its size. It's the definition of a glass cannon, because you're trading off your 3+ armor save to use your wolf hammer, and you don't really have a choice about that. You're either swinging with, a great weapon if that's your original choice, or the wolf hammer, which is strength +2 on the charge, AP -2, or just strength +1, AP -2 if you're not charging more than 3 inches. They're drilled, they're stubborn, they have the gleaming pennant to reroll. I believe it's rally checks.
Rally tests.
Yeah, don't quote me on that. The champion is equipped with a Witch Hunter's Ward for magic resist 2 and an armor save reroll, and then the charm shield on him just for giggles to get an extra 5 points in there. So I think it's like 19999. The final piece to this, and probably one of the linchpins of my list, since I've started playing them as their actual correct strength rather than strength 4 like I was doing before, but is 5 Demigryph Knights. So much to the same thought process as the Iron Guts blob, or the Iron Guts bus, or the Iron Star, or the Gut Star, or whatever the hell you want to call it. That's unit strength 18 when joined by the Grandmaster, terror causing. So
with the Icon of More.
With the Icon of More. Yep. So certainly something that is going to be prone to triggering fear checks in slightly smaller cavalry units, in small units, or monstrous infantry that cause fear, because these guys cause terror. They'll be causing fear in the fear-causing units and potentially stopping them from charging via fear checks. Another Witch Hunter's Ward on that unit to give it, again, Magic Resist 2. So my 2 big points investments have Magic Resist 2, and my Wizard, who is +5 to Dispel, will hopefully be able to slap away anything that ends up targeting them. Unfortunately, maybe not so helpful in my first game against my opponent, who will be Dave. Do you want to tick over to him? So Dave, big personality and known fixture of the Western Sydney Wargamer tournaments. He is the Australian army, for anyone who's managed to see any pictures of his army. Incredibly converted pieces, a lot of really gorgeous painting, a lot of really fun and interesting combos. His giant is a giant cricketer. His Doomdive Catapult is an outhouse. His Goblin Wolf Riders, Goblin Dingo Riders. There's the
I think the Boar Boys are the only actual standard
yes. Everything else in there, it's fabulous, and a lot of thought's gone into it. So it's always a pleasure to see, and he's a lovely guy as well, Dave. I haven't had the pleasure of playing him, but I've had plenty of chats with him and seen lots of games that he's been in, and he I'm quite looking forward to getting to play against him. But his list is probably less along the lines of something that I was really getting ready for, and is instead quite infantry heavy. and actually has his own accommodations for anti-behemoth tech. But you've got a Black Orc war boss with some trimmings. So Choppiest Chopper is basically an AP -3 strength +1 magical weapon. Charm Shield, Trollhide Trousers for regen. Night Goblin Odd Knob that's going to sit in that big 38 Night Goblin unit. Idol of Gork and War Magic to really lean into what Night Goblins are good at, which is getting rerolls of 1 on their shooting and turning their poison bows into AP -1. That's basically what that Night Goblin unit is going to be targeted at. It's a Behemoth Murderer, that unit. So you charge it. The one thing you haven't got on there is the 3 Fanatics that are also in that Night Goblin unit. But you charge it with a Behemoth, and it stands and shoot with every single Goblin if you have large target on yourself. So sixes to hit, with poison, turn to automatic wounds, which sidesteps a huge amount of the trouble with wounding those toughness 6 creatures. The potential for rerolls and -1 from Evil Bad Moon, Evil Sun. I can't remember which spell it is, but one of the Night Goblin.
Itchy Nuisance.
Well, no, Itchy Nuisance is the weapon skill one, isn't it? Weapon skill and initiative.
You can look it up. Just with that banner, it's he gets poison on 5 or a 6.
Oh, 5 or a 6.
Really? Oh gosh.
So yeah, big, scary, shooty Night Goblins. The one redeeming feature is that he doesn't have a way of really getting it around the battlefield that easily. So there's no TMP, Elementalism, Night Goblin Shaman to help it jump around the place. I think he's gone with the Wire Magic for the rerolls, which is very important. An Orc big boss who will either go with those Black Orcs or with the Orcs themselves. 25 Orcs with warbows, 21 assorted Black Orcs. It's a leaning into the 2+ armor save while at the same time hitting extremely hard for the Black Orc war boss to go in to quell impetuosity for all of the units around it. So finished off with the Wolf Riders, the Boar Boys, 1 Orc Boar Chariot, because why not? A Doom Diver Catapult, because it feels pretty essential for an Orcs and Goblin list to have that hilarious piece. His giant, is the giant's name Merv? Is that the giant?
Yeah, Merv or Kev or something like that.
Oh no, it's Big Kev.
Yeah.
It is Big Kev, isn't it?
Big Kev.
And the Mangler Squig, which is the Orc equivalent of that hilarious giant spawn that everybody loves, has huge amount of impact hits. I didn't realize how many impact hits.
Yes.
D6 +1 impact hits from the Mangler Squig, plus D3 stomps, and the impact hits are at -3 AP.
Oh gosh, really?
What's the Beastman spell that's 5d6 strength 1?
Viletide.
Viletide, yeah.
So that Night Goblin unit really is the sort of undispellable Viletide option for the Orcs and Goblins. Yeah, that seems pretty strong.
Yeah, against Alistair's 2+ armor save Demigryph Knights, it's not the one I'd be targeting.
Maybe less useful, but my biggest issue, Dave, if you do end up watching this, my biggest issue is just trying to find an opportunity to charge that Night Goblin unit where I don't just get smacked in the face by 3d6 strength 5 AP 3 hits from the Fanatics. That's the biggest thing. That wipes out my Night unit. If the Night unit goes in on it, I'm pretty sure it kills at least 1 Demigryph. If the Demigryphs go in on it. So I'll just have to try and figure out how do I pound away with 3 cannons efficiently enough to either play the ranged advantage so he comes to me and I get to pick my charges, or I don't know. We'll figure it out.
TMP, baby. TMP.
Yeah.
I think one interesting thing with his wizard is that he doesn't have a lore familiar, and he's gone with Wire Magic. So if he doesn't roll that 4...
This is true.
And doesn't get Evil Sun Shining, which is the reroll hit rolls of a natural 1 and increase your armor piercing characteristic by 1. That is incredible on those Night Goblins. But if he doesn't roll that 4, it's pretty risky, because from what I'm going through the rest of the spells, the signatures aren't too amazing for that particular character. So it'll be interesting.
What's the toughness reduction one, Chris?
Let me have a quick look.
From the signature, because that's effectively the same. I'd say mathematically, right? If -1 AP versus stacking on an extra few wounds.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately they're going to be just going for the poison from the spider banner anyway, right?
Oh, I know,
That's
but
like
if he's targeting toughness 3, then he can be wounding.
It can be definitely good
with standard arrows. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just so it's Itchy Nuisance, and that's in Lore
Toughness.
of Mork.
Yeah.
And it's 15-inch range. So I guess he could sub that out.
Well,
I think the short bows are
really
18, so they've got to be close.
Yeah, and you've also got some good magic resistance and a level 5 despeller. So hopefully you should have some good answers to that
One would think. I don't think the Night Goblins are actually poison on 5 or 6 because they don't have poison inbuilt. They don't have it naturally. They only get it from the banner.
Maybe for the Spider Riders. That 5+ is meant to be. Yeah,
maybe. But Night Goblins as they stand do not have poison attacks base.
And the Doom Diver catapult, being able to, it's a stone thrower, and stone throwers have somewhat been quite effective at wounding behemoths, but being able to reduce their scatter, I can't remember how much. Maybe it's D3.
It's D3.
Yeah. That's
pretty good. Yeah, definitely.
Well, I will point out it's I mean, it's equal to the roll of the artillery dice minus D3, representing the efforts to steer its flight.
Yeah.
So it is good. And I suppose it gives you significantly more control in this environment where the bombardment rule no longer pays any heed to ballistic skill of the crew. So, in previous editions, we've seen that bombardment be you shoot it. If you roll a scatter, you reduce the scatter by the amount of the ballistic skill before you put the template down. In this edition, as I'm sure we're all familiar at this point, it is just you roll whatever you roll and you move it regardless of whether you can see it or otherwise.
Power Straws are very familiar with that rule, unfortunately.
Yes. The only time it applies is, of course, if you're doing indirect fire, and that's basically when you roll a hit. You still scatter, but you reduce it by the ballistic skill instead of totally scattering. But I mean, stone throwers are hilarious. Like the strength 8, AP -3, multiple wounds, D3 +1 from the direct hole is tough to manage, but Doom Divers tend to do it relatively well.
Yeah. And in terms of
you go, Chris.
I was just going to say, in terms of his characters, do you think it's one character per infantry unit, or is he going to double up the orcs in the Black Orc unit?
I'm not entirely sure. Like
I think so.
The Orc Big Boss is impetuous on its own, so it needs to stay. The Big Boss and the Orc unit, they need to stay in proximity to the Black Orc unit to quell that impetuosity, unless he's willing to potentially run the risk of being baited away. But I feel like that second unit with the warbows, the Orc unit with the warbows, is intended to be sort of a backup in case the Night Goblins get caught and destroyed. So potentially having the Big Boss in there is going to be sort of quite valuable. I think it also depends, because that Big Boss is a battle standard bearer, so it just depends on what his formation setup's going to look like, whether or not, if the Black Orcs are in the middle, the Big Boss is more worthwhile to stay in the middle.
Yeah. Well, look, definitely take some photos and let us know how that goes. It'd be really interesting to see which unit he sort of sends straight for, or multiple units that he sends straight for that centerpiece, the town, to get that 3 extra BP. And that the lack of impact hits from those low linear obstacles might give you a little bit of issue. Oh, sorry. Did the Demigryph Knights have?
No, nothing I have has impact hits or stops.
Actually,
so
helps him a lot against those boar boys and the boar chariot, because that's a lot of their damage.
It's more for
so
more
if I manage to get there, the problem with me deciding to seize that and then stand behind it is I'm then just subject to whatever shooting is coming my way. I don't have a big infantry block.
Doesn't care.
Yeah, I don't have a big infantry block that's happy just to sit there and weather shooting, behind the heavy cover and just deal with it. It's a problem for me. So I feel like I'll certainly be playing around it and trying to tidy bits and pieces up before I can go in on whatever ends up in there. But if he puts the Night Goblins in there, then I'm probably going to be in trouble. The only thing maybe for Dave to remember, though, is if he does that and then deploys the Fanatics out and they go over the wall, they die immediately. So they touch a linear obstacle, they stop and they die. So I'm not sure whether he'll be
So
able
you've got
to.
Dave on the premium map.
I don't know. I don't know.
For
I
anti-fanatics.
honestly, I'm not sure whether his intent will be to put the Night Goblins in there anyway. I think he's much more likely to put the Black Orcs in there and then just dare me to come for him. Because I can kill a lot of Black Orcs, but I will have a significantly harder time with that Black Orc big boss, that Black Orc war boss.
But on the face of things, you know, prima facie, as they say in legalese, you got two relatively homely, happy, wholesome looking rosters, and then you get into this monstrosity, this absolute travesty of how many drops is this? 2? Just one. May as well just be one drop, mate. Walk us through it.
Something like that. So I said this on the 2+ show, and Alex Brown from 2+, you know, tried to make it sound nicer that, you know, net listing isn't a thing anymore, and it's
oh yes,
you know,
it
we
is.
need to get past this. Alex, I agree with you, but it's an age-old tradition to always accuse your close mates of net listing. But in this case, it's 100% true, because I've taken the Dowry After Dark list and just straight up copied it, right? Tom, I think I actually played this against you online for the very first time a number of weeks ago.
I just want to quickly say also that, like, we've got our own personal group chat, and I've named Alex Taylor Jerry number 1, Alasdair Taylor Jerry number 2, and Chris Taylor Jerry number 3, because anytime we play, there's some new concoction. Oh, I found it on Darwin After Dark. Yeah, all right. But we all know what's going on. We all know what's going on. Just piece by piece, he's putting together that perfect superhero suit.
We're just training you up, Tom.
Yeah, we're getting you ready. We're getting you ready. You got to rep ogres. We've got to have one first ogre player and second in this chat. So,
Done.
So this is a setup you'll see very common across dwarves, with a king who has a great weapon, so he's strength 6, AP 2, but critically on great weapons you can put dwarf runes onto them. So it has a master rune of smiting to give him D6 wounds. He has a master rune of Grommel to give him a 2+ armor save, and a rune of preservation to make him immune to killing blow and multi-wound weapons. Which, if anyone has been paying any attention to the scene right now, Ogre Blades, Bretonnian Killing Blow, Bretonnian Exile Axe,
Knights of the White Wolf.
The
Tenderizer, obviously,
the Tenderizer,
as well.
Just all of our
anything
armies,
like that is an issue. But you know, he's designed to face tank a dragon. And he has, you know, gone in.
We've seen it in past tournaments when this particular king has been run, particularly in those first couple, when there were a handful of dragons that thought that it might be a good idea to run at the D6 wound causing king and didn't have a good time.
Well, critically, he has hatred built in, which people forget. And he also gives hatred to a Longbeard unit if he's in it as well, and hammers as well.
Hatred enemy characters.
I think he picks one
yes,
character.
sorry, correct. Sorry, apologies. Hatred enemy characters.
No, and then there's another thing where you choose.
I think you pick one character on the table.
Yes, that's a royal clan special.
Yeah, so he has flat. The king has flat hatred enemy characters, right?
Yes, that's correct.
That's the rule, and then there's the royal clan thing, which is
that you can pick an additional character or the same character, but the royal clan rules are: I pick Tom's, tyrant or whatever. I kill him and I get 75 extra points. So it's actually a bit of an insurance piece to say, don't come at me. And the problem with the king is, in the past, people will just avoid him. So credit, goes to the way more experienced dwarf players than I am, in saying, well, let's just limit the number of units dramatically, aka to 2, and say, well, the king's either in this one, and if you're going for the other one, I'm just going to run him across to that one. And he's going to take you on either way. So he goes from great to unbelievably good with the next piece, the Toughness 10 Anvil of Doom, where if he gets his Rune of Stone and Steel off, I think that's what it's called, to reroll armor saves, then suddenly he's becoming very difficult to kill because most things are AP2, and with a 4-up rerollable save, you're saving a lot. Anvil of Doom, great piece, toughness 10. It's not something you're going to be able to kill very easily. Backing up by that, there's a Battle Standard Bearer Thane with a 3+ armor save, a Master Rune of Grugny, which provides the unit that he's in with a 5+ ward save, and a 6+ ward save to units beside him in the shooting phase, plus a Rune of Battle. So the Thane basically just runs between which unit the combat resolution buff and the ward save needs to be at. So again, we'll look at my next opponent, but if there's a dragon coming at the Iron Drakes, he runs into the Iron Drakes. If there's a dragon coming at the Longbeards, he goes into the Longbeards. And to play this list, you just play it as one big brick. There's no, I'm going to put this unit over here, I'm going to put it over there, because you need these people to be jumping between them. The one thing that's missing off here, though, is the Runesmith. For whatever reason, it's not on that. Yeah, that's okay. Effectively, there is Runesmith in here with a 3+ armor save and a Rune of Spell Breaking too, which is an auto dispel. Not a dispel scroll. No rolls are necessary. As long as you're within 18 inches and not combat, yes, you can just auto dispel. I only put in one, and this is where I have a bit of difference with the others, because in a lot of Dwarf lists, they run the Thane BSB. They don't run the Thane BSB because they run a Runesmith BSB. But I'm terrified about having 260 points on a toughness 4 2 wound model, which can be targeted in combat. And by the way, he provides buffs as well to the unit. So if he's in the Iron Drakes, they become AP -5 on a 6 because they have Armor Bane 4 on them. So anything with a 2-up save. Who runs 2-up saves? I don't know. Gone.
Now,
Gone.
Viewers out there,
Yeah,
if you may be getting a sense of why he's called Taylor Jerry number 1. I just want to point out something quaint. After months of running Wolves of the Sea with mass skirmishing skinwolf units, mastering the art of arc avoidance and flexible play and charge judging and all these movement specific things, laser lines, putting things on people's charge arcs so he knows exactly where he's going and where they're going in his own turn, and leaving them there in their turn to add insult to injury. He's now playing the one army that just doesn't move.
Doesn't care. It doesn't care.
Unless you move them 27 inches on turn 1, right, Alex?
Yeah, correct. That's one trick up the sleeve, right? So the 28 Longbeards with drilled, Rune of Battle, Master Rune of Hesitation. So what Hesitation does, it removes weapons or impact hits, anything that requires you to charge effectively. And this is actually where Knights of the White Wolf are great, because Wolfhammers don't care. They really don't care. They lose that.
They don't get the extra point of strength, but yes, they still keep they keep a point of strength and their AP.
Yes. So excellent. But against most things, the Rune of Hesitation is there to basically give you 2 bad choices, which we'll go into as well. Grudge Thrower is there. We've spoken about before. No runes, which makes me worried, but I'm assured by the Dwarf Discord globally that it happens less than you think, which means guaranteed it's going to blow up first turn in the next 3 games. Dwarf Cart to give +1 movement around, because one thing that people don't realize about drilled as well, because they're higher movement people with drilled, is that you still have to be within that double move for models to go into the extra frontage. So if you're movement 3, you've only got 6 inches to work with, and if you're at the back of the Longbeard unit, I think it doesn't happen. You actually might be limited by going 2 at a time, at most. So it's important to get that extra movement. 18 Iron Drakes, fantastic. Rune of Courage to make them immune to fear and terror, and a Rune of Battle. So again, you want to make it so, okay, you want to charge the Longbeards, maybe the Kings in there, you don't get your Lancers, you don't get your impact hits. Everything's got high static combat resolution. Everything's a 4+ armor save starting point, plus wherever the 5-up ward is going to be, plus wherever the anvil buff is going to be, depending on where you are. So wholesome. So it is definitely a points denial list. It's got no maneuverability at all. It is short range, apart from the Grudge Thrower and potentially the Anvil of Doom throwing out 27-inch magic missiles. But yeah, I'm keen to see how it goes because I'm up against...
Well, just real quick, I just want to point out the static combat res on these units as well, right? So you've got a Standard Bearer on the unit.
Yep.
You got a Rune of Battle on the unit.
Yep.
And then you flit in the...
Everything's got minimum
Fame.
+5.
So it's minimum +5 is crazy, right? So just keep that in mind for a lot of these like big sort of juicy units like a dragon that want to come in and do as many wounds as possible. It actually doesn't matter because you'll challenge out, they'll get the max overkill, unless it's the king, of course, in which he's probably going to live, and then you just smack him with the static combat res.
Except for the iron, sometimes the iron drakes are a little less because they're going to be in the line, but they might only be +4 to start with.
Did you mention the entrenchment rule?
No, I don't have that here.
Oh,
I don't have that here. No.
How unfortunate.
Yes,
How
unfortunately.
unfortunate.
Unfortunately, on this one, I don't.
You know why? He read the players pack, and he doesn't need to be entrenched on low linear obstacles in round one.
No, Tom. It's because he read our lists and he decided that he
Yeah,
wanted to be entrenched against our list.
Let's see. Did he somehow manage to pick the dragon in his round number 1? What do we got?
Shock horror, I did. So it's not only a dragon. Charybdis is a behemoth. Alasdair.
War Hydra's a behemoth as well.
War Hydra's a behemoth. So, Maddie, I'm grateful to have drawn you, if you're listening to this, when I have low linear obstacles. No, I have to get to them first, you know what I mean? And it's not the panacea of behemoths out there, but it's definitely going to help to try and stop some of those. But you know, his list is, he's got the Black Dragon, he's got some shooting units in there, albeit I think in most cases, including the low linear obstacles, he's hitting on 6s. By the way, I will be 2, shooting at things behind the other low linear obstacles. We're both ballistical 4 with our shooting units. The problem for me is getting points, because there's no way he's going to be running his easy, juicy, toughness 3 units into range of my Iron Drakes, right? I don't think he's going to be doing that. The dragon doesn't have to engage, which is the other thing. It has a strength 4, ignores armor breath weapon, which can just fly around the board. He does need to be in range, so he would need to suffer through Iron Drakes and Trollhammer torpedoes constantly shooting him. He does have a 2-up save versus shooting with the Sea Dragon Cloak.
Sea Dragon Cloak plus full plate plus shield is 2-up. Yep.
It's 2-up. Yep. So 2-up save against that. He's got a 1-off ward save with a Charm Shield. So if a Trollhammer torpedo does go through, I suppose he could use it on that as well. But critically, that's the only real counterbalance in this list, because I don't foresee him running in and going. And it's not like my Dwarf King's going to charge out in the middle of the field going, I'm going to chase down a dragon. It's not going to happen. I think for Matty, for him to get points, it's nuke down the Dwarf cart with the dragon, maybe get the Anvil and Grudge Thrower, and he's won. And he's won the game. And try and ignore
Anvil
the big
will be
blocks.
hard now that you're toughness 10 though, which is really good.
Yeah, just on the points gap thing. So I think it's fair to say that you're probably going to get the 3 bonus points for holding the center.
I just have to walk up and touch it.
Yeah,
effectively, and I've got a 28, toughness 4, 28 unit strength.
So that's +3 to you. So now I'm curious, what is the actual points gap that he needs to get on you to get above that 3 bonus points?
It's like 400 points, something like that.
So basically, it's the Dwarf cart and the
but that's assuming that he loses
Anvil.
nothing in return. So that's quite an uphill battle for him.
It's
the Anvil,
it's going to be a close game.
Yeah, the Anvil will be really important as well, because you have those magic missiles, right? You can chuck them out. It's essentially
the
fireball.
problem with the Anvil is it can't move, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Magic missile is 27 inches.
Yeah, but are you going to get a
Yeah.
position that's capable of defending you in a 27-inch bubble that's going to be able to utilize that against his toughness 3 stuff, which is what you really want to be using to clear it out. The other thing I think it's important to point out, dark magic on the Supreme Sorceress might just mean Doom Bolts. Could just mean dropping repeated Doom Bolts on your big blocked up unit
Could be all Black Horror.
Black Horror for initiative tests, definitely.
Yeah. Well, what happens if you fail the initiative test? Is it an auto wound or just a strength 3 hit?
Let me double check. I'll tell you.
Yeah. But if he rolls up Word of Pain, I'm gonna World of Hurt.
For sure.
Yeah.
Where are we? Black Horror. Here we are.
If you fail the test, you lose a wound, a single wound.
Okay, so that's
it's
brutal.
Strength
It is
test, so-
okay. It's strength test, so you're actually not bad. It's not initiative tests.
Okay. That's not bad.
Okay.
So 66% chance still to lose it, but
Yeah.
you've
you'll
also
be
got
doing
that
that.
automatic. You've got the automatic dispel once per game, which is nice as well. So when it looks really bad, after you've tailored and really just brought the game out to just the turn 5 engagement that you've been able to control, hopefully it'll pay dividends. But
Yeah, the big problem I feel that Matty's going to face against you is your capacity to deal with behemoths. Like, he's got the best part of 1,000 points between those 2 war monsters and the Dreadlord on the dragon in with behemoths, and if you add the chariot to that as a multi-wound model that's susceptible to all the things that behemoths are susceptible to, it's well over 1,000 points. So your carefully crafted, bespoke, artisanal, totally original list that you've come up with is somewhat tailored to this outcome. So I feel like Matty's going to have to work hard to get round it. I don't think there's an easy answer for him. I think you're going to have a much more straightforward time. But I suppose that's what you went for with 4 units.
Yeah. My game plan is definitely simpler. I would say he will have complete control of the board in this case. And if he does get just multiple Black Horrors bouncing backwards and forwards, a couple of lucky random dice rolls on the Longbeards, well, that can swing the game. That's Warhammer, folks.
Yeah.
That's Warhammer. Not
will
everything
be really
needs to be a
interesting,
20-0.
Yeah, and I love that about the Throne of Skulls comp as well. But I think you'll really be able to capitalize on any potential mistakes that Matty makes. And I think as soon as if one of them does happen, I think the way that you've constructed your roster is just gonna it's probably GG at that point. Whereas I feel like if you make a mistake, you've got a little bit of mileage there with the almost guaranteed capture in the center and, just 2 big units that you have to worry about, really.
We'll see. We'll see.
Nice of you to say that he constructed that list.
Yeah. I made
Very
some
true.
subtle changes.
Yeah.
Chris.
18
One at a
Iron
time.
Drakes instead of 16.
Yeah. All right.
Scale it up,
So,
baby. All right. So this is sort of what I've come to develop. This is also very heavily based on one of the UK players that's very good at Ogres, Jack. He was on Darwin After Dark and just sort of revolutionized my way of thinking about how I'd approach Ogres. I've since gone to one of the 2+ events that was not Throne of Skulls comp on the 15th of Feb. And that was really fun, but I was also bringing that mounted tyrant. And just with the saturation of, a lot of things that can deal with these behemoths that are running around by themselves, I've since dropped him and now put the tyrant on foot. But other than that, it's relatively similar to Chris's roster. So I've got a foot tyrant with a 5-up armor save that can't be reduced, Potion of Speed for a little bit of a cheeky play in the command phase if I can find one, and the Tenderizer, which is just a bit of a souped up Ogre Blade, AP3 instead of AP2. It gives me an extra attack as well, which is really strong, and an Ogre Pistol. I'm trying to see if I can snipe off some, or force some panic checks, because he's actually BS4, which is pretty good. I've got a Slaughtermaster. He's got the Law Familiar, so he's picking and choosing his spells, mainly just going for Oak and Shielded battle magic, which is super, super important. Because as we'll see in the Iron Guts, you've also got the regen. So you're essentially going for a 5-up armor save, a 5-up Oak and Shield save from battle magic, and then the 5-up regen that you get from the Cannibal Totem. So he's also joined by the Bruiser, which just goes with a great weapon in the War Banner for that static combat res, and the Ruby Ring of Ruin. So you've got the Ogre Pistol, which is going to do very minimal. You've got the Slaughtermaster with Fireball, and then you've got Ruby Ring of Ruin that's going to try and chuck out shooting in conjunction with this 2 Iron Blasters as well. So I'm going for like a points denial thing with a lot of shooting to force you to come to me, which is the play, right? All 3 of those characters also have Death Cheater to force those really important rune roll re-rolls. Should I face Bretonnian, monstrous killing blows or whatever have you, or just killing blows in this case. Going into the Iron Guts, they have what they have. They've got the Cannibal Totem, they've got full command, and that's it. I have 3 Ogre Bulls, just like Chris did, but luckily I managed to read the players pack, and I'm also bringing a Standard Bearer. I've got 2 sets of 2 Saber Tusks with Scout. Whether or not they actually scout or just sort of deploy is sort of depending on the matchup. I found Saber Tusks under a lot of pressure from Alex and Alasdair to be really, really, really fantastic at forcing hard cover or forcing light cover in my units. And so they can just be instrumental in either, and so flexible. Like they pressure backfield artillery, they pressure backfield sort of fragile units, and they give hard cover against a big, say, Night Goblin unit with poisoned or whatever have you. So they're really, really, really strong. And
2 wound toughness 4 as well.
Right. That's right. Initiative 4, weapon skill 4.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, they're really good. And, even if all they do is 2 sets of 38 point, I get hard cover opportunities. It's fantastic. And it usually would force my opponent to dedicate some shooting or some magic into dealing with the Saber Tusks or whatever have you to remove them, so then a big unit can have a crack. So I quite like them. 2 sets of Iron Blasters because they're really good. Unfortunately, they haven't done anything for me whilst playing them, but hopefully this event is the event that they really kick into gear. And then since I've dropped the Thunder Tusk variant on the Tyrant, I've included 3 Mournfang. Chris and I probably differ on our opinions of Mournfang. Chris, though, is the top-rated Ogre player, and I'm, again, just tall. So I was really worried about the sort of imminent gunline rosters coming through with Alex's, 89 Drakes and Alasdair's potential great cannon saturation and handgunners and all that kind of stuff. But I've decided to put them in because I did think that after my Bretonnian stomping, or I got stomped by 2 Bretonnian rosters in the 2+ event, that having a countercharge option was really strong, especially because they're so fast as well. They have 8-inch move. They get to reroll their impact hits. They've just got a lot of wounds, and if they want to be shot, then they're taking pressure off my Iron Guts. So the characters all run into the Iron Gut block, and you've got, I think, 1,200 points protected in that unit. So if you want to go for everything else, be my guest. And the Iron Gut unit is quite flexible in that it can go deep for a lot of static combat res, or it can go quite wide for just sort of mass attacks. The one thing that we do need to be careful of course, having so many characters, is you can only have equal rank and file models as you can have characters. So I'm locked into the Tyrant and the Slaughtermaster in the front rank, or the Tyrant and the BSB in the front rack, unless I go out to a 6-wide formation, which I think I might do against my opponent. But before we hit that, do you guys have any opinions on this roster?
We need to point out that I think, talking about rules, comments, and debates in the WhatsApp group, I think your list sparked something like a 200 message debate about the frontage unit, of which you were not even in.
Yeah. The guys usually do all the rules hard work for me and just tell me. After the fact.
I think critically the frontage was easy, but there was a lot of discussion about whether you could opt to put a third character, like the Slaughtermaster, into the rear ranks when you deploy. As it says, if it doesn't fit in the front, it can go in the back. Without triggering the too many characters rule or any form of retirement on there. And I think that was what took up about 150 lines. And I believe we've come to the conclusion that yes, it's fine.
Yeah. Strong advocate for that as well, because it does mean should you choose, the 4-wide formation, you still have access to your defensive spells as opposed to just losing everything altogether, which felt a bit weird. And it's one of those things that, I'm sure the rule set isn't necessarily intended to accommodate for the niche scenario of a gut bus wanting to do this. It's much more along the lines of, preventing people from really looking for character abuse. Take Empire, for example, where you could take just this swath of Empire captains in a unit of veteran state troops, and if you were able to take 3 Empire captains and sit them in a 5-wide formation, suddenly your ability to hit back, because they're protected by the unit's ability to defend, it becomes significantly bigger. But ogres have such a limited model count anyway. It's inevitable that this sort of stuff is gonna carry over. But I suppose it just reinforces the point that we've already made of the rather haphazard nature of writing. And of rules thought, and also the way that they've approached all of these legacy books in such a lazy way to just not have any sort of anticipation, not have any sort of understanding about what the core rules actually mean to a lot of these legacy factions. It's disappointing, but I think that's also the acknowledgement that we have to have, that this is not 8th edition. This is a new Warhammer, and it will eventually look very, very different to the 8th edition that we know, particularly as they start introducing factions that were never in those older books, which is much more likely than them reviving a legacy faction.
There's a few changes that I already want to make. I think Chris's roster with the Four-Morn Fang Cavalry is absolutely the sweet spot. And there's a few tweaks that I'd make. I'd probably double up the Ruby Ring of Ruin on the Slaughtermaster so he can do both. And then you have the option as to hide the BSB for that static combat res, or hide the Slaughtermaster, etc. But yeah, I think I'm going to bring back the Bulls and do away with the Iron Guts, but that's a conversation for another time, and maybe this event will shed some light on where we go. But unfortunately, I've probably,
I think you've drawn the hardest one.
Easily drawn the most unwholesome list in the entire tournament, and I've gone straight in. I'm the most novice player probably at the event, and I've gone straight for the Double Dragon. So,
unfortunately, yes. Now, Richard was at the event you played in, I believe, at the 2+ event.
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't have the pleasure of playing him, nor would I know what he looks like. But yeah,
right,
this looks
away,
fantastic. Yeah, tell me what I'm up against.
Yeah, pain. It's an MSU list with 1,000 points of dragons. It's as simple as that. You've gone. Richard has gone for the sensible choice, which is 1 prince and 1 level 4 archmage, and 1 is on a toughness 6 star dragon, the most powerful dragon in the game of Warhammer right now, pure stats wise. And then an archmage on a moon dragon, so slightly less intimidating, both from a weapon skill standpoint, because of course when you attack a ridden monster, you strike against the rider's weapon skill, not against the mount's weapon skill. So despite the fact that the moon dragon is weapon skill 6, you're striking against weapon skill 4 of the archmage. But also toughness 5, not toughness 6 on the moon dragon, and I think maybe 1 or 2 less wounds as well. That said, I don't think you're going to see a huge amount of that archmage in combat unless he rolls Spectral Doppelganger. I think it's more likely he's going to take the -1 to hit on it, and then look for opportunities to chase small things, not necessarily against you, but the bulls might suffer on your backline. And then the prince, I mean, it's not the worst prince at this tournament, and it's not the worst prince you can build for less than 500 points, but it's still a pretty obnoxious prince. It's a 2+ armor save, 5+ regen save, a 1-off 5+ ward as well. It's weapon skill 8. It is impetuous, but I don't think he cares, because you want a dragon to be in combat anyway. Your Tyrant stands a decent chance against it, but at the same time, it's a weapon skill 7 dragon, I'm pretty sure, strength 7 dragon as well, and a weapon skill 8 prince with a sword of might, so not that terrifying again for the Tyrant to be tanking, but
yeah, it'll be 3s and 4s for him.
Yeah.
But the dragon's going to be doing the damage. The saving grace will hopefully be that, of course, I'll have a 5-up from the Armor of Mediocre Iron and a 5-up regen flat, and then hopefully I'll also have the Oaken Shield.
This is,
I'll just be challenging straight away, but he won't even be going for the buffs, surely.
That's the assumption, right?
Yeah.
He's going to use the 3 Lothan Skycutters, which we know are great chariots with D3+1 strength, 5 AP -2 impact hits. He's going to be using them. He's going to be using the bolt throwers to throw 48-inch bolts at your cannons. He's going to be probably chasing them, probably chasing the bulls. Probably chasing the Mournfangs, and if he ever goes in on the Iron Guts unit, it will be at the very, 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 very end.
Multi-charge.
Where you've spent most of the game likely chasing the MSUs to hit them with fireballs. And he'll hit you in the rear, he'll hit you in the side, he'll put both dragons into you, plus, whatever of those Silver Helms survive, and the Skycutters all at once, and most likely overwhelm you with combat res. Yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty yuck.
Is there
It'll be
any
fun.
particular logic behind the Shadow Warriors? Do they do anything in particular?
They're
Is it just the longbows?
They're BS 5. They have longbows. They've got feigned flight, which is good. I'm pretty sure they've got evasive as well. So, in terms of logic and application, it could be bait. So, if he's running against a magic missile list and he doesn't want you shooting at everything else, he puts the Shadow Warriors just within 24 inches of you, and says, "Yeah, please shoot me," and then he evasives back out of range. They're like Sisters of Avalon have been established as being, the premier choice for skirmishing missile units for high elves, but Shadow Warriors still have a place. Like, they're still quite good.
Yeah, I can see a Lothan Skycutter going in if he wants to kill like a lone Empire wizard, for example. The Skycutters hit the units that are babysitting him, and then he just goes 5 high ballistic skill shots at your toughness 3, no save,
No armor,
2 wound, no armor wizard, and goes bang. There you go.
The Chariot Runners, I think it's a free choice that you can take on one unit of Shadow Warriors. I'll have to have a look, but Chariot Runners is entirely superfluous with the Lothan Skycutters having fly.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like there is no point in having it other than it's maybe just a choice that you could take. But
they might be his best painted models.
They could be. They very, very well could
Or
be.
just his favourite in the range, yeah.
It's like mine. I just take the dwarf models I've got painted.
Yeah.
Sure.
But this is
all 20 of them. Yeah.
This is.
I think, it'll be rough. There's 1,000 points in characters. I've got 1,200 points in my unit, but I won't be able to get 1,000 points off of his extra, and I think he'll, not easily, but he will likely be able to get nearly 800 points worth of stuff from mine. But, it'll be a game. I think I've got a good chance of definitely doing some unit wipes with the double fireballs. I have 2 really great cannons that can have a crack at either his Eagle Claws or his Lothern Skycutters, or even just put pressure on the Prince or the Archmage. So there's options. It'll be a game, and we'll see.
I do want to acknowledge the pun that's been repeated around those great cannons, being that they are both great units, but they are strength 10 D3+1.
I'm really appreciating that you picked it up, Alasdair.
That's okay.
That's why you're on the show.
Thank you.
That's why you're a Behemoth.
So I feel, even though they're only 36-inch range, there's still a projection of force that you can offer that might give him pause. Like, again, both of those dragons have a 5-up regen, but they don't have the triple layer save that makes those toughness 6 behemoths truly obnoxious. They've got
Thank
2.
goodness for Throne of Skulls, right?
Well, correct.
He's still a toughness 6 chariot, right?
Toughness 6 chariot, 5 wounds, yep. So they're pretty good. Yeah, definitely. D6+1 impact hits.
The lists were locked in before the High Elf Arcane journal, right?
Yes.
So there's
yes.
no
Yes.
arcane journal stuff.
No,
here.
there's
Yeah.
not.
No,
Oh,
we
yeah, we
seem
should
to
caveat
always
that, yeah.
have the tournament
Just before.
Just before.
just before, just the weekend of the release. The weekend
That's
of the release.
that's what happened to me last time, where I was running
Yeah.
Empire, and I would have loved to have done some arcane
Yeah,
stuff.
some White Wolf stuff. Yeah. But look, they're the rosters that we're taking. If you guys want to see the rest of the rosters at the event this Saturday, Alasdair and Alex were both on the 2 Plus podcast, and they did all of them. So we'll put the description in the video or the podcast, wherever you're sort of consuming this media. And that's a great video or a series of videos. And you guys do a really cool little job of going through them and providing a comprehensive look.
With some rules mistakes, so bear that in mind and
It
read the
happens.
comments.
It happens. It happens. But yeah, well, look, it'll be good. What we'll try and do is we'll have a little bit of a recap on our March event and show you guys how we went with maybe some photos or some debriefs, and that'll be really cool. But at this point, I guess we want to pivot into what we're working on in terms of models very quickly at the end, which is a lot of fun. So I think we've got a few photos from Alasdair's range here. So this is your wolf themed army. And
So this'll be.
do they look good?
I mean, they're great sculpts. So big shout out to Last Sword Miniatures, who have this incredible range of Empire models, including very specifically some great Knights of the White Wolf themed models.
So not called that.
No,
Copyright reasons.
they're definitely not. But yeah, some incredible range in terms of the poses that you can give them. I love the dudes who are so the horses in particular all have this really great feel of movement. And then the bodies that you can put on top of them. I love the big swinging hammers and the weight that you can sort of feel in some of the weapons that are given to them. So great range of miniatures. I'm painting off the old Knights of the White Wolf scheme. Forgive my potato phone photos, but it is the classic Knights of the White Wolf color scheme. They've been a lot of fun to paint, and the reason that I wanted to focus on these, other than they've been the big highlight for me getting ready for the weekend, is actually the snow effects, the snow and the
Base
mud
looks
effects.
really good.
It looks incredible.
unreal.
Which, I will give a shout out to AK. I don't know. No, my light's going to wash them out for censorship purposes. But it is
product placement.
it is AK Terrain's snow and wet ground acrylic effects, and they are fabulous. They're so much fun to work with, really simple to use, and have led to these. This is a couple of minutes. If I spent a bit more time, I'm sure I could make the snow, a little bit more patchier and a little bit more diverse and everything else. But this is, a minute or two per base to get a really outstanding sort of semi-melted snow effect that goes across the whole unit and will tie the army ultimately together really nicely when I run the Knights of the White Wolf. It'll make also any display board that I have at the end of the day look pretty
I'm going to copy
outstanding.
that basing scheme, I think.
It's absolutely worth it. It's so
I like
worth
that
it.
you picked the correct color for the base rooms as well.
Black, yeah.
Black, right?
Definitely.
The only one. What do you mean?
The only color.
What was that snot green that they used to
Goblin
do in
green.
White Dwarfs?
Goblin green,
That was
whatever.
unbelievable.
so good.
Also these are also true to form color scheme for what's the city that they're from?
From Middenheim. So
Middenheim.
these, like I said, this is the old Games Workshop Knights of the White Wolf when they had proper army books. This is maybe 6th ed or 7th ed out of that book when they introduced Knights of the
Knightly
White
Orders.
Wolf
I think
and the
6th
Knightly
ed
Orders.
had all of those theme lists added.
Well, then it's probably 6th ed, but the scheme, the colors, everything else, straight out of that, because I wanted to be true to it. Like the Knightly Orders are such a fun concept, and to be able to run White Wolves, I suppose I'm stepping slightly away from that, I will admit, by including giant wolves as demigryphs instead of demigryphs
That's super
themselves.
cool, though.
But at the same time, I feel like there's a justification to be made and a reasonable argument. And these wolf models as well are just gorgeous.
Gorgeous,
And I'm in the midst of painting the remaining 5 to get them up. But I got the Grandmaster done at the very least, and he looks so good. good.
He does. He looks fantastic. So hopefully we get some photos of that on the table on Saturday. And I think Alex is the next up. What's going on here? They've got no bases, mate.
Well, this is going to be a problem. So when I decided to go dwarves, it was literally the night before list submission, and I thought, what could possibly go wrong doing this? But when I was thinking about what to do for my non-evil army, it was either going to be high elves or dwarves. And if they had released lion cavalry in high elves for Shrey's, I would have 100% been sucked in, like I was sucked in with the werewolves for Wolves of the Sea. So, but with the dwarves, there was one thing I wanted to do, which was dip my toes into oil washing. So what you're seeing here is my production line of 28 Longbeards from the Beholder miniatures. Fantastic range. They are totally inspired by the Roman centurion helmets. Great looking detail in all of them, many different poses, etc. And this is probably where the 3D printing community is coming to shine at the moment. That the quality of the designs is incredible. And Chris and I were talking about this before, but what I wanted to do, you're seeing here, is their pre-wash stage. So I typically try to use the same colors that I normally paint with. So I like painting with lots of contrast, lots of out there colors: reds, turquoises, purples, pinks.
For
do you guys
viewers,
remember,
for viewers
you guys
at
remember
home,
Alex's red lions from High Elves?
Yeah,
I've still got them.
Favorite.
For viewers at home, it is important to note that Alex is actually colorblind. So
Not fully, but
a lot of this, you do an incredible job picking picking contrasting colors and picking some particularly vivid hues and some really outstanding combinations, in spite of the fact that you're colorblind.
Yeah, I kind of go for the Bob Ross, which is like, nobody actually cares. Just do it. Just put paint on and go.
Have a beautiful day, y'all.
If you go to the next one, if you've got any
they
more
look great,
photos,
So good.
This is then post oil wash, right? So I'm definitely a convert now. I love that with oil washes, you can bring so much variety to the colors that you want to apply to it, and then wash it off, whatever you want to do. So sometimes it leaves a bit of a color here, but you can take off as much as you want, and maybe we'll do a video at another time, kind of going through that a bit more step by step. Critically, the other thing you're seeing here is my late change of base choices. So I spent about 2 days FDM printing 50 bases, where you can see on the left-hand side the stones and the masonry, etc.
Testing marble basing
techniques. I kind of had it down in a way, but the problem was that it was a light base on a light color scheme. So I said, bugger it, I'm just going to change it and go for a crystal. Another just from Telexari, I butchered that pronunciation. Telexari factory with the bases, crystal bases, and it's been printed them non-stop. And I think the darkness of it works well. I think there's one more photo where it really showcases, on the Iron Drakes.
That contrast, yeah.
Yeah. So
I just want to go back to this though, like the rim on those shields on the right hand side of the shields, and just like the beautiful aspect of the oil wash is providing you that like sort of that curved sheen. Just looks so natural and fantastic.
Non-metallic metal without needing to go through such an extreme process to get there.
Yeah. Well, here's very much. I kind of did it with my chaos, where I thought with the basing, we don't need to be boring either, right? So I threw on, I do a bit of a zenithal prime of the base, and then we'll go into this deeper detail in another video, but then throw on literally some $2 Kmart craft paints of reds and browns and turquoises, and mix it all together, really black wash it in all together to kind of blend it. So from a bird's eye view, you're getting a lot of different colors, but it's all kind of desaturated a bit. And then I've gone for bright blue crystal on here to provide that extra pop. Because if you really want to go deep in color theory, which I have to get out the color wheel every time, we've got reds, and we've got purples. So if you're going for that non-direct contrast, and you want to bring that, and the artist will kill me, what it's called when you have the three that are close together. The blue's the next one in that sequence, which kind of comes together. So I've gone with that. Although my wife does tell me that some need to be red, so we'll see.
Oh yeah, vary it up a bit, but like it's also a really nice contrast from the sort of the straight non-metallic / metallic metal that you're going for on the top dwarf. Like that's fairly monotone, and so breaking it up with an interesting base. I'll never forget a guy always used to say that like a miniature's not complete without like an interesting base, and I think that's sort of where you get a lot of mileage to experiment and play with really cool things in fantasy because of that square base plus movement tray mileage. And I think,
and we should say, Tom, this, as notably named by Alasdair, is the Windex bottle method, where I've simply... it's almost cheating. It's ridiculous.
It makes me so mad.
It's so mad. It's a black undercoat. It is a... I did lead belcher spray. Then I did a silver from Vallejo from above, like a Zenithal silver.
Makes me so upset.
I put some like brass from Vallejo just in some of the gold bits.
No,
probably an hour, including the spray painting, and then I whipped out the oil paints, slopped them on. Literally, I just got a black one. I got a grey blue one and a purplish one, and just slapped it on, and then got my sponges out with the white spirit, and that's what you get.
There's a dude whose TikTok and Instagram videos float around from time to time, and he quite literally has Known oil in a Windex bottle, and that's all I could think of. Because like, I hate painting miniatures, and so I just paint them in bulk, and this is how I do it. And all I could think of when you were describing the process and when you were talking to us about it earlier and then showing us the results, I'm just like, I'm so angry. I've spent hours on these nights to get.
But you were late to contrast paints too yourself.
This is true. This is very true. And we've still yet to convert Tom.
Oh God!
No, I don't know if we will. I don't know if we will. Chris isn't converted. Alice isn't converted.
But show us, Tom. Yep. Show us why we can't convert you.
You'll have to forgive the potato photos as well. My room does not have very good lighting at all. But these are the attempts at some rusty, battle-worn, very tribal sort of ogres. You'll note that a lot of ogre schemes in the old world books or picture sources, etc., have like very colourful pants because they're all pirates and they've all like gallivanted around the world as mercenaries. But I really wanted to just sort of go back to the Mountains of Morn, tribal sort of movements that they were going for, with a lot of scratchy leather and a lot of moisture that's gotten into this armor and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of verdigris, there's really a lot of rust, and I've really tried to make the skin the focal point for all of these ogres. And so not a great photo here, but I'm really proud of how the skin tones have been built up and sort of meticulously painted over hours and hours and hours. And
this is
you go.
I was just going to say this is a textbook example of why the old style of painting, the classic approach to miniatures painting, was so successful for so long, and it's taken a revolutionary product like contrast paints to start to level the field. Because my God, Tom, the skin on those and seeing those in person, seeing just how smooth that transition is and the shadow that's layered on there, the photos absolutely don't do it justice. This is the effort and the craft that you've put onto those, and I hope you show the horn as well that you've done, because
that's in the work in progress one for sure.
It shows. It absolutely shows.
And no knock on the contrast paints though. Like they look. The contrast, you can do some unbelievable stuff with contrast. It's just that I really quite like that old school single brushstroke method. And you'll see you can't get a good photo of it here, but any wood is single brushstrokes to build up a bit of a texture. All the verdigris is like multi-layered blues and sort of shoved into crevices and stuff like that. And yeah, the skin. What I've wanted to do is just make sure that every skin tone is built from the ground up, so I don't do the same recipe over and over again. I have some really nice like artist opus paints that you mix out, and I'll just sort of go where it goes. It's a big hobby for me. Like I want to keep it at that instead of just sort of.
Tom, unlike Alex and I and Chris plays so many systems that I think Chris paints for expediency. But unlike Alex and I, Tom doesn't have kids, and so Tom has an amount of time.
I've got nothing.
Necessary.
I've only got Warhammer.
But it shows the reward of such an involved process, and I do feel that you should be very proud of the way that you've done, and you can be forgiven for showing up to tournaments, even the tournaments that don't allow you to place, like Western Sydney Wargamer, unless you've got a fully painted army. I think you can be forgiven given the amount of time and effort and craft that you're putting into this.
So here's just an example of some of those skin tones. A little bit of a better lighting, and that verdigris as well. And then you got his back here as well. So you can see that it's like really
ridiculous.
tried to get those center points the lightest point of the model and use those, the light sources, essentially, that you'd naturally get from sunlight coming down or whatever. Unfortunately, the base is not finished, but of course, I'm going to do something very similar to Alasdair, and these are the bulls as well. So I actually quite prefer painting the bulls, really, because they've got a lot more of that skin tone to work with. They don't have those random like armor patches and stuff. All the faces are uncovered. It's quite a lot of fun. And the bulls have a completed leather scratchy pant texture as well, which you can't really see in the photo, but that's where all the iron guts are going to be going. And this is literally maybe the most backbreaking model I've ever painted in my life.
Oh my gosh.
It's actually broken me. My will to go on is stopped.
Talk about single brushstrokes. Like if you're watching this on YouTube or on a handheld device, bring that up and zoom in on
Describe it for the audio listeners, Alice.
Yes.
It is. I mean, it is hyper realistic horn that has been painted in such a meticulous fashion that there are not tens, there are not dozens, there are probably hundreds of single brushstrokes to get it looking as close to the real thing, where there is accumulated grime in between grown horn layers, where there is, blackened dying bone on the tips and edges of these generated bone things. I'm not even going to talk about the wood, because you showed me that the other night, and we're not going to talk about that because I don't.
That's for another show.
I don't have the time nor the tissues to pick up my drool.
But yeah, like all of the wood. Like, I mean, these divots here are textured, but there's no other texture on the model. So I've had to like make it, and I'm not done, and I'm not even close to being done. Nor will I probably ever be done.
At some point in 2027, when you've finished painting this and legacy armies are officially eliminated from the old world.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's disgusting.
I think it's good that he's picked a low model count army for this.
That's why I did it. That's why I did it. There's no other reason.
I could not imagine you trying to do like a marauder heavy army.
Oh,
how much skin is
no
on
way.
that?
No. Well, you could with contrast.
I was tempted by the Lothern themed elves, but then I was looking at them. I was like, I just can't fathom, doing that.
Painting that many.
Yeah. But yeah, let's go on to have a look at so just keep in mind for context, guys, our very first episode that we've ever recorded, it's called the Old World Behemoths, right? So very fantasy sort of Warhammer sort of style and all that kind of stuff. Chris was the first person to send me photos for tonight's recording, which I was really thankful for. But lo and behold, what came up in my email? I don't.
So,
Chris, please explain what's going on.
So the context is I originally had a ticket for the event, and I was gonna paint my Stonehorn, which I desperately need to do. And then I ended up, some other stuff came up in real life, and I had to drop out of the tournament. But I've got another tournament next weekend, which is a Lord of the Rings tournament, and I've somehow locked myself into painting basically Lothlorien elves.
They look great.
Thank you.
So
like,
I will forgive the
Gold is
submission.
Yeah, like as Alasdair pointed out, I definitely paint for speed, not for beauty. So just whatever to get them done was what I was smashing out. I'm actually smashing some out right now because I've only got, 2 weeks left?
The audacity.
But one thing I'd like to point out about these is, so the Lord of the Rings is a very old game from Games Workshop. These guys are on, I believe, 25mm bases.
Oh, yeah.
And one thing I'd like to point out with Old World is that base size increase. Not only is it just does it look better, but it just gives you so much more creativity and room to do things on your base. Because these guys, I honestly think, are going to be almost impossible to base in a interesting way.
Yeah,
because I just don't have room on the bases for them. So I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do with that.
Yeah, Chris, are you painting these from black?
Yes.
Yeah, and you know, I think it was a note I was going to say earlier about beforehand when we all started Warhammer years ago. It was undercoat black and paint up.
Yeah.
And if you'd asked me even 5 years ago if I'd be painting from a grey or a white, I would have gone, oh gosh, no, not a chance, not a chance. And now I don't think I could go paint to paint black. Okay, I use a lot of contrast paints.
Yeah.
But a little hobby hack that I've since learned with oil paints is even with contrast, you don't even need to be that precise if you're using oil washes, because you can have a bit of white left over and people say, oh, it doesn't always fill in and there's a bit of gap and sometimes I've got to go over it. If you're using an oil wash, it fills all of that in. It's the lazy man's choice.
It, right? Yeah.
Like my painting technique. So I didn't actually use any contrast on these guys. It's all basically 2 layers of each color, and I don't have the steadiest of hands. So my first layer is generally quite rough, and the longest time is that second layer because I basically have to go in and just tidy everything up.
Yeah.
And there's usually a step at the end where I have to just go back over every single color and just do little bits here and there. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how they turned out.
Yeah.
Well, look,
just
guys,
sorry, just one final thought, I suppose, and I'm wondering whether my camera will pick this up. But just on that thought around base sizes. So two things. First of all, it opens the door to sculpts that actually allow you to take advantage of a full base size like that, right? So on a 20 millimeter base, which is what the old infantry bases for Warhammer Fantasy, you'd never be able to find the room to have something as dynamic as a sort of stepped forward infantry unit. It allows you to put bigger models on there, but it also this is the crappiest texture paint PVA glue flock basing scheme on it. Right? And it still ends up looking really nice on a 25mm base because you have the room to sort of spread it out and make it look authentic and make it look natural. Where on a 20 millimeter base like we used to operate on, or even like those circular bases, you just have no room.
Yeah.
You've got nothing to work with. So it's
definitely
one of the nicer changes from the old world. But anyway.
Well, look, that basically will wrap up the first of our many episodes to come. So that was, of course, the Old World Behemoths. I need to get that right. The Old World Behemoths. Maybe we should have thought of an easier... Behemoths. So thanks, everyone, so much for joining us. We have launched Patreon if you guys want to help keep the sort of lights on and upgrade our software and, of course, funnel just stacks and stacks of money into Alex's
he needs
resin.
a new RGB microphone.
I do. They need a new HyperX quadcast.
And we've got a couple of shout-outs too.
Yeah, we do have a couple of shout-outs. So Patreon, of course, which you'll check out in the description below if you do feel obliged. But Chris, Who designed our lovely, lovely logo?
So it's a place called 25 Creative. So if you look them up on Instagram, it's the word 25 and then creative.
On LinkedIn as well.
Yes, lovely little design studio. Did a great job on the logo.
And all the links, of course, will be in the description below. Alex and Alasdair, do you have any shout-outs?
I suppose shout out to the rich Australian podcast community. We've referenced the 2+ boys, which we're close to in Western Sydney as well. You'll see us speaking on their shows. We'll probably have them on here to talk about some hobby, but we've got to note the fact that there's a bit of a joke going around that Australia's got another podcast. I think it was Danny from Dwellers Below that said that you can't be an old world player in Australia if you don't have a podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I suppose off the back of that, the enabler for so much of what we've been doing, and one of the big reasons for us to be painting and diversifying and everything else, quite frankly, is the Western Sydney Wargamers group, who's been hosting these events in Blacktown since the middle of last year. I mean, we've had some amazing times with them, and it's been probably for us as a Sydney-based community looking for opportunities to, get together with a lot of people, old and new to the hobby. It's been an outstanding thing for us, and we're ever so grateful to. I'm gonna forget someone, but Michael, Zeke, John, Garrett, and everybody else who's made that series of events one of the most sought after in particularly our community, and as they grow bigger and bigger and bigger, probably one of the most sought after events in Australia. So big shout out to them, and we'll continue to plug them and showcase our participation in those events.
They sold out in like 3 hours last time, I think.
Yeah, it was nuts.
It was crazy.
And there is a wait list, I think, of 9 or 10 people to this list, which has 30 attendees so far.
So good. Yeah, every quarter, 30-man tournament, 32. It's fantastic. But look, thanks again, guys, for joining us. We're going to have some hobby videos coming out, as Alex has stated before. We're very happy and keen to show you what we're working on. We'll do some tournament recaps, and basically anything else that you let us know that you want. We're happy to hear feedback. Of course, that was probably a rocky start, but hey, look forward to the peak quality old world content here coming out of
in
Sydney.
About 100 episodes time.
This side of Chippendale.
Yeah.
If you've made it to an hour and 51 minutes, thank you so much for watching this far.
Thank you. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Peace.
Ooh.